Hello, welcome back to this new China Roundtable 2024. I think it's our very first roundtable of this year, guys, unless I'm mistaken, but I think it's our first one, right?
That's right.
So yeah,
Yes,
that's our
right.
first one. So yes, for this first one, you're gonna notice it's gonna be only us. We're gonna be talking about a wide range of issues, and we won't going to be long. We're going to be short, and I'm really happy for this roundtable to have Antonia Timmerman, our South Asia editor. She's based in Indonesia, Jakarta, and I'm also happy to have Jony Essa, our Middle East editor in Jerusalem. Hello, guys, welcome and happy New Year's to you. Happy to see you back among us again.
Happy New Year to you, Geraud. So good to be back.
Yes.
Happy New
Thank you,
Happy
Journey.
New
So we
Year,
have a
Geraud. Thank you for joining
really
you.
thank you. We have a lot to talk about today. We're gonna have three main topics to cover today. We're gonna have Wang Yi's trip, China Foreign Affairs Minister who started this trip in Africa. You know, guys, it's been almost 33 years of consistency since 1991 that the first trip of a Chinese foreign ministry overseas every year is to Africa, and this year was no different. From January 13 to January 18 is going to visit four African countries. He already visited two. Today is going to visit one and is going to visit another one, Cote d'Ivoire, in the coming days. So we're also going to talk about Nichols Walker and safety in Indonesia, where Antonia Timmerman is going to tell us the story about how things are unfolding there. There was a situation, a crisis that happened there, I think last week. She's going to tell us more about what's happening there. And finally, we're also going to talk about the Red Sea crisis with Jony from Jerusalem. And talking about Red Sea, during his trip in Egypt, Wang Yi mentioned the Red Sea crisis with Egyptian Foreign Affairs Minister. So we're going to talk about all those subjects. So just to go straight into it, let me go and start with Wang Yi's trip in Africa, where we are going to try and understand what's happening, why he's visiting those countries, and what's happening there, and what's the real challenge and what the subject of discussion here. Let me go with the video where it's talked about where he visits Egypt and he had the press conference with the Egypt foreign affairs
The
ministers.
officials discussed cooperation and exchanged views on developments, including the deadly war in Gaza and Egypt's eastern border. Wang called for a start to the implementation of the two-state solution to open a political horizon. The international community has been paying high attention to the current conflict in the Gaza Strip. I spoke in depth with Minister Shukri and we have reached a high degree of consensus. We will publish a joint statement between China and Egypt on the Palestinian issue, emphasizing an immediate and comprehensive ceasefire, the release of hostages and detainees on both sides, the implementation of United Nations resolutions, and the establishment of humanitarian aid mechanisms to facilitate the Palestinian National Authority's exercise of its duties in all of the Palestinian territories. The Iran-backed Houthis have been carrying out attacks targeting vessels in the Red Sea in what they say is a campaign in support of Palestinians in Gaza. The tension in the Red Sea and the violation of the freedom of navigation, whether intentionally or accidentally, are all things that predict the expansion of the conflict and the entry of the region into a vicious circle of escalation. The US military struck Saturday another Houthi-controlled site in Yemen.
So we see that Wang Yi's trip in Egypt had started on very high ground with very interesting topic on the table. They talked about the crisis in Red Sea. I think we're gonna have Johnny's comment on that. We also talked about the crisis in Gaza. So for those who are following, I'm trying to to tell you why Wang Yi started his trip in Egypt, because the trip in Egypt is quite particular in a certain way. Last year, Chingang, when he was visiting in Africa, Egypt was on the list. And this year, Egypt came back again. It's quite not common to see a same country coming twice on a China Foreign Affairs Ministry trip in Africa. So having Egypt on the list kind of raised certain question on why Egypt came back twice. So to give people context, I'm giving two elements here. The first element will be the current situation in Gaza and China's position in the crisis in Gaza. We know how much China has been pushing with the two-state solution, basically with the United Nations solution. It's been pushing for the a peace, a ceasefire in the region. It's been working with different countries in the region as well, with Arabic countries. We remember they had a conference last year where many Arabic countries, foreign affairs minister went to China. They spoke about the issue. So China going into Egypt, starting with Egypt, kind of makes sense in that sense. We also have a second element to keep on that issue about Egypt, is the fact that Egypt is one of the African countries that joined BRICS since January this year. Last year, when we talked about the BRICS expansion, we mentioned the fact that Egypt is going to be one of those countries. Now you have Egypt into the mix. So just because of BRICS and the crisis in Gaza, we kind of understand why we have now Egypt coming twice in a row on a trip of a Chinese foreign affairs minister in Africa. So it's going to allow kind of people to understand why Egypt came twice and why it's important to have also that Egypt was on that list. We also have three other countries: Tunisia, Togo, and Cote d'Ivoire as well. In the case of Tunisia, it's a very interesting story. It's been few months now that Tunisia is in crisis with Europe. They're not seeing eye to eye on different issues, human rights violation, and any kind of issues. So it's kind of puts Tunisia in a spot where Tunisia is not looking into different partners that are not, kind of get involved in this in an internal issue of human rights and democracy. And I think that if Wang Yi had a press conference with Tunisian foreign affairs minister, he mentioned that situation, saying that China supports Tunisia freedom of sovereignty, and China is opposed to any kind of external interference on Tunisia affairs into the matters. For the rest of the details about Wang Yi's trip in Africa, I've made a quick tech video that's going to be available for our users on our website, where I kind of dwell and dive into the details on why Togo, for instance, which is a small country, or where China is, expanding on the big country and small country diplomacy, how Togo is fitting into that. I also talk about Cote d'Ivoire, of course, where China has a massive investment there. China has been working and expanding infrastructure in ports, in roads, and many stadiums that have been used for the current African Cup of Nations have been built by China. So all those elements are part of the Wang Yi's trip in Africa, in those countries. So yes, I'd have more into those details. So yeah, this is basically the situation with Wang Yi's trip in Africa. Before going to another subject, I'd like really to have Jony's take on the fact that, for instance, that during his trip in Egypt, and you heard that he mentioned the situation of the situation of Gaza. What's currently China's position and situation and stance on the Gaza crisis right now?
Yeah, so thank you, Geraud. So the Chinese stance on the Gaza conflict or on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict has more or less stayed the same, looking for a long-standing solution and pushing the humanitarian factor of receiving a ceasefire immediately and trying to come back and to negotiate a long-standing two-state solution. So the Chinese foreign policy has been trying to achieve this without actually getting involved way too much as the Americans and the Western agents or the Western sides, and they have done this, in my point, in a strategic perfect way. So they came out of this conflict as a champion of the global South. They came out of this conflict with aligning with most of the Arab countries who are supporting the Palestinian on one hand, and who view the Israelis and the Americans in a hostile way on the other, and we'll see this when we speak about the Red Sea crisis as well.
Okay. And we see the difference. And before diving into the Red Sea, because you're going to talk about the Red Sea situation right now, but how China's position is seen and perceived by Israel right now. I know that Israel is receiving a lot of heat and fire from different parts of the world. We have now that the South Africa who's accusing Israel of genocide in ICG. How Israel is seeing and perceiving China's position on the Gaza crisis right now? Is it welcome, or is he perceiving China as much more into the other side of the spectrum, as if a non-amicable country in that crisis?
So the thing is, with the Israeli side, they can't downside the importance of China economically.
Yeah.
So you can't separate the leverage that China has economically with the political and diplomatic weight that China has in this conflict. So China is not getting involved, let's say diplomatically, as the Israelis would have liked, but that doesn't perceive, or that doesn't show us a situation where there will be a cut in ties between the Israeli and Chinese, because China hasn't supported Israel diplomatically. The only thing that means, in the future, if China comes and tries to mediate or tries to work as a mediator, the Israelis will likely be cautious.
Okay.
They will likely prefer to work with the Americans and not the Chinese, because the Chinese haven't had such an aggressive stance against the Palestinians and Hamas. And the same thing with the Houthis. So they haven't condemned Hamas, and they haven't condemned Houthis, and they even don't mention the Houthis by name, or they don't mention Hamas by name. And they just try to, let's say, walk in this path where they wanna achieve the popular voice of the global south, and on the other hand, they don't want to sever ties too much with the Israelis.
Okay. So since you already have the mic, since you already have the stand, I think we can jump into your topic, because you want to cover us on the China and Red Sea crisis. Can you tell us what's currently happening in the Red Sea situation? We've seen bombing happening with the UK and the United States bombing Houthis, I think how you call them in Yemen. We see that China did not support that. We see many Middle Eastern countries blocking the airspace, not allowing any foreign jet fighters that are going to Yemen to cross those countries. What's China's stance? What's the current situation on the Red Sea crisis right now?
So I'll just put it in a context. So from we can watch the video, and then I'll try to analyze it.
Maersk says one of its container
Danish
shipping company has paused all journeys in the Red Sea following a series of attacks on vessels. Maersk says one of its container shipments was targeted by a missile allegedly coming from a part of Yemen controlled by the Houthi rebels. The group has declared their support for Hamas and vowed to attack ships travelling to Israel. A Maersk spokesperson confirmed the ship was not hit and all crew were safe.
Yes, we have that situation now where the Red Sea, crossing the Red Sea become very unstable, and we really don't know what's happening there. And the United States and the UK and other countries have been reacting. Even on the West, we see some countries are not really supporting those bombing. What's China's stand, and what the situation on the Red Sea crisis right now?
So the situation is like this, in my point of view. So this is a domestic Houthi issue that they're trying to turn into an international image. So the Houthis are now they're more or less finished with the peace negotiations with the Saudis, and they need they need to stay in power. They need to stay legitimate. They need to
Yeah.
stay in the point of in the eyes and the point of view of the people. So what they're doing is they just they went from the civil war, and they're just trying to ignite and to initiate, let's say, further crisis. This is by hitting chips, hitting the most popular trade route between the East and West, which basically limits or decreases the route of the ships by 10 days. So most ships that come from China to the west come through the Bab el Mandab Strait, through the Suez Canal, and continue their route. So the
Yeah.
problem is, uh, because of the attacks, and because of the frequent attacks going on, the West and the United States, they initiated a coalition that China isn't part of or doesn't want to be a part of, and China even is speaking against this coalition and against these attacks, and saying that a coalition should be formed in the United Nations. So we see again, we see the Chinese reaction going through the more diplomatic, strategic channel of the United Nations. So basically, talking and speaking, and not offering um, um, a coherent alternative to the West.
Okay.
And this might be because maybe China is actually benefiting from this, because there are actually accounts of Chinese chips not being not being targeted, or
Oh,
even
really?
chips. Yes, there have been accounts of Chinese chips not being targeted, or even chips from different companies, even saying that they have Chinese staff, or even
On,
saying that they have Chinese workers uh, on the chips not to be targeted. And
That's
I will also, in continuation to this video,
that's
in
very
the
interesting.
upcoming days, in the
yes, yes.
upcoming days, I will um, I will video a short take about the whole situation, and will mention in more detail uh, the crisis more. But but how I perceive it is, China wants to offer its leverage in one way or another. It's too early to see how this will go, because of the connection between the Houthi and the Iranians, and because the Houthis are playing the role of being anti-West, and in the
Okay.
end, China also plays the role of being anti-West. But in the end, this this objective is also hindering or also hurting um, the economic measures of China. So we need to see in a week or so how this situation turns out or handles out.
Okay. So basically, since
Jony, I have a
Houthis, no,
sorry.
go ahead. Go ahead,
Can I?
Antonia. Go ahead. Go ahead.
It's Jony, it's very interesting when you said that China is benefiting in the sense that Chinese ships aren't attacked in the Red Sea, and I'm wondering, how do you see that this Red Sea crisis is going to benefit China in the long run? Because I just read an interesting opinion just today. Some say that this will benefit BRI projects around the world, because clearly now we're seeing we need an alternative route for trade. People are starting to realize this, and some are saying that, oh, this will be, the BRI project's time to shine. What do you think of this, Jony?
In addition to the BRI projects, for as you said, it's their time to shine. There also have been accounts, and the China Global South Project, we wrote on this of maybe China benefiting because of the land routes, or the land routes, instead of the shipping routes. Now it's time for the land routes to shine, or for time to use, or to turn the land routes to a more efficient route, as an alternative for the shipping routes. In Israel, I'll give a personal anecdote. So I went to buy furniture, and there was actually mass hysteria about we can't give you the furniture right now because we don't know when the furniture will come from. So it's basically, so let's say IKEA, for example, they use the shipping routes from China to here. So instead of getting the shipment in 5 to 10 days, we'll get it in a month maximum. So there is mass hysteria in Israel about the consumption products coming from China. So because most products are imported from China, there is some kind of mass hysteria. What will go on? Not only it will take more time, it will take more money, and things will become more expensive. So this is the thing. So if China wants to benefit from this, I have to figure out a situation of a balance of also using the land routes. Like theoretically, if I think about it, it would be more expensive than the shipping routes. But
Yes.
so we need to think about that. Or in the end, is China waiting a week or so to use this leverage with the Iranians and the Houthis to find a solution, or is it only standing on the fences, and it will maneuver, let's say, a diplomatic solution in the end that will benefit all the sides? For
Yes,
now, I don't know what the solution is, but
yeah,
we need to wait and figure that out and see
that's really
how
interesting.
things go on.
That's really it's going to very be interesting to see. And I think China is trying to maintain a certain balance where it doesn't want to frustrate Iran and the Houthis, and it doesn't want either to frustrate Israel in a certain way. And it's trying, I think there is an angle where China doesn't want to escalate the situation, because when you see where the situation is happening, the Red Sea, the escalation can just, I mean, really, really, disturb the international trade routes. Although like we can mention the land route option, I don't see the land route option being a viable solution in the longer run, because it's going to be costly. It has more risk. It has more risk than the shipping route. So, and the amount of, let's try to imagine the amount of trucks you're gonna need to ship to replace one big cargo if you have to take big trucks on the land on land. It's a tremendous amount, and it's too much. That's why I do believe that on the longer run, I think China is going to have to take a stance where peace solution needs to be found in those crises. Otherwise, it's going to escalate very bad. So far, it's playing the safe solution, but I don't know how long it's going to play. So, John, you wanted to add something else?
Yeah, just one sentence. Beside, if we compare it to the Gaza conflict or the Gaza crisis, where China doesn't have much a role, much to say, or much hands-on, in the end, this crisis will affect China.
Yeah.
So this is something we have to keep in mind. So the Middle Eastern crisis affected China's role as an upcoming diplomatic maneuver, as an upcoming diplomatic rising star, as an alternative to the United States. Here, there isn't no alternative to the Chinese economic trade route. So we have to see how China will interact, how it will play out. For now, China is walking on both ends. If the Houthi attacks escalate, then our role is to see what China does. But for now, let's say with the increasing Houthi attacks, there's still an equilibrium where China has the role to maneuver.
Yeah. Yes, we see that. We see that.
I don't know if you disagree with me or not, or if you have anything to add on this.
For me, it's really interesting to see, because China is really playing in a very, I don't know how to read that. it's really staying on the safe side of the debate, and it's very that kind of philosophy of non-interference. China wants to be friends with everyone, with the Iranians, with Israel, with Gaza, with Gazawi people, with Arab countries, with the Houthis. But at some point, it doesn't work like that. At some point, you're gonna have to, make some people happy, some others sad or mad at you. But you cannot just hope that you're gonna maneuver in a way that you remain the friends of all people who are fighting who are fighting each other, but somehow you manage to be the one being their friends, all of them. I mean, it doesn't work like that.
You're gonna have to
So
pick a side.
you have to pick a
Yes.
side at some point. You're
Yeah.
gonna have to pick a side. And as Jony said, on the longer run, this Red Sea crisis, if it escalates, if it really goes bad, even China is going to be impacted. Even China is gonna have to take a position. But will the position be to go straight against the Houthi? Or it's going to be, tell the US and the UK, you are the one who are responsible of the escalation, so you are the one who created the crisis. And maybe at the same time pressuring Iran to pressure the Houthis to stop the attack on the Red Sea, on the Red Sea trade routes, to allow the trade route to be open. Yes, and the same time on the other side, I can feel Israel I can imagine Israel believing that, knowing how the Houthis are supporting Hamas, knowing how China doesn't want the Houthis to be attacked, they can see it in a way that maybe China silently is siding with the Hamas and the Gaza people in that crisis, in a way that they don't want to get they don't want to get Gaza and Hamas on the wrong side of the history. So it's very interesting story to see how it's going to unfold, and I'm looking forward to that in the coming days and weeks. I think many things are going to happen on that front. So that was the coverage on the Red Sea crisis and Wang Yi's trip in Africa. So now we are going to our editors. Antonia, you have an interesting story to tell us about nickel safety workers and, I mean, fire in the town. I don't know, in a processing plant. Tell us what's happening with nickel's work and safety in Indonesia.
Thank you so much, Geraud. Okay, so I want to tell you guys about this fire disaster that happened at one of the Chinese nickel smelters in Indonesia on Christmas Eve. It's very sad. So this particular smelter is owned by Indonesia's Tsingshan Stainless Steel, which is a subsidiary of Tsingshan Group. As you know, it's a big Chinese stainless steel company. And so this smelter is located in the Morowali Industrial Park, which is this massive industrial complex full of nickel companies. Many of the tenant companies are Chinese, and the industrial complex itself is a complex that is backed by Chinese investors, and so they bring a lot of Chinese workers as well to work at these smelters. So anyways, the workers at this particular smelter were repairing the furnace when the fire broke out, and it killed 21 people so far. Some died on the spot and some died in intensive care. I believe dozens were injured, and among the dead, it was 13 Indonesian workers and 8 Chinese workers. I think we can show you now a clip from BBC News Indonesia that shows moments of the fire so you can see for yourself. There it is. You can see in the middle of the video that people jumping from the top floor, which is consistent with the survivors' stories, So right after that incident, we sent a photographer down there. His name is Yuda Baskoro, and we got him talking to the survivors and the other workers. And the survivors told him that they had to jump from the top floor and they get injured really bad. We're going to show you some of the photos that he took. There you are. Here is a victim with very severe burns. He has worked there for 8 years. He was on a break, I believe, and hanging out with the other workers when the fire broke out. And so he had to jump out from the top floor. and so he jumped while holding onto a pipe. That's what he told us. And they all said this is an yeah, and they all said the fire was very sudden and that they are very traumatized. Now, I want to tell you that this is a big scale accident. There's a lot of casualties, as you can see. So it drew a lot of coverage from our local media and also international media. And we have people commenting, politicians are commenting, the president is commenting. But I want to tell you that, work accidents are very common in nickel industry in Indonesia, and most of them don't make it to the news, right?
Okay.
If you go to the workers, if you talk to the workers in this complex, you will almost 100% have a chance, have 100% chance of somebody telling you either they have experienced an accident or they have seen or heard somebody having an accident. You have somebody hit by a truck, somebody falls from the seventh floor, and then you also you'll hear people telling you that they're not given proper safety gears for the first few weeks that they work there, or there's not enough training. And they will tell you all of this in hush hush because most of them will be scared to talk because they're afraid of the repercussions from the companies and also from the government. So not only they have precarious working conditions, they also cannot talk about it openly. So this is something that's been going on for years and years and years without much improvement. And I guess it's very unfortunate that we have to keep bringing this up because China is a very important partner for Indonesia, right? But we have to
Yeah.
talk about this issue, the issue of workers' safety, workers' rights to be safe, if we want to continue to talk about China-Indonesia partnership in nickel,
Before
and
moving
in
before
other critical minerals.
before moving forward to that, my question is like in this situation, where lies the problem? Is it there's not enough rules and laws that's control that sector, or there are laws that are just not implemented, or where can we find those issues? Where do we find the core of the core cause of those issues?
So
Antonia,
I
let me
yeah,
add to
sure.
that because my question connects directly to what Geraud just asked. So,
Go ahead.
for an external observer, so what you're speaking about is some sort of regulations coming from either the factory or from the country. So are the regulations like uh, Chinese based, or are they uh, are they based from, let's say, Indonesia, or is there some form of, let's say, um, uh, is there a committee? Is there a contract? Is there some form of, let's say, a treaty,
Agreements,
that
yeah.
agreement that is supposed to guide how the safety of workers, both domestically and internationally? And after you answer Geraud's question, can you also see the same issues in China itself? For example,
Yeah.
workers who work in the same trends or the same sectors in China, do they face the same obstacles?
Yeah,
What
that's a
what
good
can they learn
question.
from one another?
So, first of all, I don't believe there is a committee, not as far as I know of. And I think that is a problem. I think this should be everybody's problem. So, if you ask me where is the core problem, I think it should be um, in in every stakeholder should have this problem. So it should be coming from the company itself in
Yeah.
Indonesia, it should be coming from the government, the Indonesian government, and it should be coming from the Chinese government. And so everybody has to work together to make sure that this doesn't happen anymore, right? So yes, as you said, Geraud, is this a problem of lack of regulation, or is this
Regulation,
just
yeah.
not implemented? I believe we do have regulations. We do have the environmental standards. We do have the social standards. It's just not being enforced. So that is the first problem. The second problem, and I believe this can only be solved by the by China, actually, is the screening from China itself. So
Okay.
I believe it is also in also in China's interest, right, to make sure that their workers are safe when working abroad. So what they can do, actually, they can increase the standards from inside the country first. So for example, if a Chinese company, say, wants to invest abroad, the government should say, wait a minute, prove first that you are going to be responsible, right? And then from the funding side, the Chinese banks should be required to screen their investments, for example, to include only the most responsible projects with minimum risk. And then they're allowed to go outside. So I think that's how you should tackle it. So everybody has to work together. It's not only the Indonesian government, it's not only the Chinese company, it's not only the China government, it's everybody.
But I think from the China, from it, I'd say I won't say from a Chinese company, from any private company perspective, it will be the tendency, especially in the mining industry, the tendency to want to cut costs is high. Especially when you say when you know that you are working in a very difficult environment, so you tend to cut costs in things like safety measures and the security here, security there, because they are so low that, and you also expect that major crisis won't happen all the time. They will, so they won't happen. They maybe they will happen once in 5 or 4, 10 years. That you say, I can allow myself to cut costs there. So that's why for me it's like, what's the part of the environmental, I mean the part of the governing side of the country in terms of like how the regulations are happening in the regulation on nickels and processing plants in Indonesia, how they enforce, how Indonesia is really adamant into making sure that, you know, they really pay attention to that. Because from a company, from any private companies, I can tell you for sure, they will never, the mindset will never be, how do I make sure that people are 100% safe? They will always be,
Yeah.
how do I make enough money just to keep them not as much as in danger, but always on the borderline of like, maybe one major crisis may happen, but we just avoid that just enough. So I think that there is, as you said, there is a need of collaboration on both companies, Chinese company, expecting them to be much more, you know, rational in the way they much more in the rational and paying more attention. And for me to be much more on the government side, they should really make sure that companies do enforce regulation. If they don't do that, I think that we're gonna have much more crisis later on down the line.
Have large
Exactly.
scale
And
crisis
so
like
that's why we have to make sure that it's going to be expensive for this private company to
Yes.
have accidents. That's the key, I think. And that's why I talked about funding as well. So we have to make a system so much so that if a company wants to ask for funding, they have to make sure that their workers are safe, that they're being responsible with the environment and so on, so that it's much more expensive for them to have accidents and to, you know, to not be responsible for the environment and so on. So that is the kind of system that we need to build, I think.
Okay.
uh,
Okay. So,
Antonia,
Johnny, last comment, you want
yeah,
to make a question?
yeah. Have large
Yeah.
scale accidents like these happened before recently that were covered?
Um, So as far as I remember, not as big as this. I think this is one of the biggest, at least in the last decade. Like I said, there are many accidents, many accidents before that don't make it to the news.
Okay.
You know, it's probably like 2 people died, 3 people died, and then the company tries to keep it low and keep it a secret. So that's why you don't hear it. But if you talk to the workers, they will tell you like a lot of stories. If you talk to 5 people, I can guarantee you 4 out of 5 will have the stories.
To
Yeah.
tell. So yes, we really having those. Antonia's doing a very interesting job. Is she's working on a very interesting project on nickel project, Chinese nickel project, and other project in Indonesia. All the story that she's mentioning, the big one and the small ones, guys, are going to be a part of the package you're going to see when we're going to release the interactive map of nickel's project in Indonesia. There's a lot to learn. I'm really telling you, what we've done with Cobalt project, it's a small part comparing to what she's going to do with the nickel project. You're going to have videos, you're going to have interviews, you're going to have articles, you're going to have so many a hub of stories telling you and giving you a much more understanding of the nickels project in Indonesia and the part of the responsibility of Chinese companies and the government responsibilities and all those interaction between different stakeholders in that Indonesia nickels project. So this was our China, our first roundtable of the year. We're really happy to have you as supporters. You are following us on YouTube. We're really happy for your support as Patreon, and you can really keep on working, subscribing on our content. We have now tremendous content that we do videos, that's available only for our subscriber on our website. You know, earlier I mentioned the quick takeaway I've done on the Wang Yi trip in Africa. It's only available for our subscriber on the China Global South website, that's where you can find the content. And keep on following us on our different website, China Global South in French, Projet Afrique Chine in English. And I'm gonna let Jony, what's the website in Arabic, because I don't want to butcher it, and we're gonna put it on the show notes. So you're gonna have all the links on all those websites, so we can see the content of what we produce. So Jony, tell us what's the name of our website in English, in Arabic.
أخبار الصين والشرق الأوسط.
That's let me put it down so our user can see it, so you can see what is it. You can visit it, and yes, that's coming. So yes, that's our website in Arabic. So guys, ladies and gentlemen, it was really our pleasure to have you for this first roundtable of China in the Global South. In the name of Eric, Antonia, Cobus, Njenga, and all the team, we wish you an happy new year 2024, and looking forward to keep on giving you much content and coverage of what China is doing in the Global South. In the name of Antonia who was here, and Jony, I say thank you and see you next week for another roundtable. Bye-bye.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.